Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really digging into a book that honestly changed the landscape. We're looking at the source material for Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate the impact. Published back in 1952, this wasn't just a bestseller, it was, well, a phenomenon. The sources say millions of copies sold across different versions. It really tapped into something. A post-war need, maybe? A search for a simple, workable philosophy of living, as Peale put it.
And he seemed genuine about wanting to help, not just sell books.
Right. He spoke about the privilege of suggesting this philosophy to people. And for you listening, think of this deep dive as kind of a practical guide. Peale himself was really clear this isn't magic.
No quick fix here.
Exactly. He often said he was his own toughest case, but he genuinely believed these principles could lead to a life of, joy and hope and victory. But he also warned it's not easy, often hard.
So our goal today isn't just to talk about thinking positive in a vague way. It's to really pull out the specific, practical techniques, the spiritual methods, the mental disciplines that Peale actually laid out.
Yeah, what are the actual steps he claimed could produce this victorious life if you really practice them?
Precisely. And he was very deliberate about how we presented it, not as some airy philosophy, but he called it a practical direct action personal improvement manual.
He wanted it to be used. He insisted he was giving demonstrated and effective principles, simply, logically. The aim, to help you, the reader, build with God's help. He'd add the life you truly desire. It's a huge promise, really. Practice this stuff, and you can change your circumstances, take control. And that really all starts with the foundation, which is belief in yourself. Okay, let's get into section 1. The foundational philosophy applied Christianity and self-belief. So the whole system, Peale framed it as applied Christianity. He wasn't claiming to invent anything radically new. He felt these powerful ideas came from, as he put it, the greatest teacher who ever lived.
Jesus Christ, in his view.
Yes. His skill, or maybe his genius, was translating these ancient spiritual truths into modern language, into concepts people could grasp and use in their daily lives, at work, at home, making it feel relevant, pragmatic. And right at the core, the absolute engine for all of it is belief. Chapter 1 pulls no punches. Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. He's incredibly direct about it. He says flat out, without at least a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, success, happiness, they're basically impossible.
It's not just nice to have, it's essential, a prerequisite, absolutely. Which
Right.
means right away, you have to tackle the biggest obstacle for most people, those feelings of inferiority, of self-doubt. He spends a lot of time on this, doesn't he? Why we doubt ourselves.
He does. He saw that often these feelings aren't logical, they're emotional. They might stem from way back in childhood or some early failure that stuck. And they create this internal friction that stops you from acting effectively.
And it can show up in really unexpected ways, like that story he tells about the talkative executive.
Oh, that's a great example, yeah. This guy, highly competent, good job, but his boss just couldn't trust him with anything confidential. Why? Because he wouldn't stop talking. He'd let slip private company stuff.
And it wasn't like he was trying to cause trouble.
No, not at all. That's the fascinating part. The analysis Peale offers is all about psychological compensation. See, this executive came from a poor background, didn't go to college, wasn't part of the same social clubs or fraternity as his colleagues who were, better off.
So he felt like an outsider, inferior.
Deeply. And to make up for that feeling, his subconscious basically pushed him to talk, specifically to drop hints about the inside scoop he had, the secrets he knew.
Trying to impress them, to get some recognition that way.
Exactly. It was this subconscious drive to boost his ego, to feel important, to make them think, wow, he's really in the know. It was a way to seek validation, but it was completely backfiring and hurting his career.
It really shows how sometimes the things holding us back, the worry, the overtalking, maybe procrastination, are these weird, twisted attempts by our own minds to protect us or get noticed.
And Peale's point is, once you spot that emotional root cause, that leak, then you can apply the specific spiritual solvent he recommends.
Which brings us to that simple formula he mentions in Chapter 1, the story of the man plagued by feelings of inadequacy.
Right.
And the prescription was incredibly simple, at least on the surface. He was told to repeat a line from the Bible, Matthew 17:20. If ye have faith, nothing shall be impossible unto you.
But it wasn't just repeating the words, was it? There was more to it.
No, and that's crucial. The sources say the man also got counseling to address the roots of the inferiority feelings scientifically.
Right.
But that was combined with, maybe even solidified by, this act of religious faith. It was the blend that worked.
Right.
And the result, he developed authentic confidence. Not arrogance, but a steady self-belief. His whole outlook shifted from negative to positive, and then, Peale says, success started coming to him. The internal change created the external shift. Which leads us straight to one of the most powerful statements in the whole book, something that really anchors this psychologically. It comes from Dr. Carl Menninger, the psychiatrist.
Attitudes are more important than facts.
Exactly. Let's just sit with that for a second. For a practical, maybe skeptical 1950s audience, that must have sounded pretty out there.
Totally. It's a fundamental claim about how mind shapes reality. Peale explains the mechanism like this. If you face a problem, a fact, and you obsess over how hard it is, you visualize it as this huge barrier. You constantly tell yourself it's impossible. You're feeding it energy.
Precisely. You're mentally inflating the fact, giving it a power far beyond that which is justified. Your attitude is what makes the fact seem overwhelming. The fact itself might be manageable.
So the problem isn't the fact, it's the fear of the fact, the mental energy poured into negativity.
Exactly. So the solution is you flip the switch. You reverse that energy flow.
You deliberately, mentally visualize and affirm your assets. Peale uses the example of a man feeling defeated. Okay, maybe things are tough, but what does he still have? A wife, kids, friends, his own integrity, faith.
Focus on the strengths.
Yes. Focus on what you do have, what is strong. When you do that consciously, affirm it, reaffirm it, your own inner power starts to push back. It stops the fear from draining you and starts pulling in energy from confidence instead.
So confidence isn't just something that happens to you. It's a result of what you habitually think about. That's the actionable insight. You have to cultivate confident thoughts until they become the dominant habit. Push out the negative ones. Like that Bezel King quote Peale uses. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. Your growing faith literally changes your attitude, setting the stage for success. Okay, so that's the philosophy, attitude, belief, applied faith. But how do you actually do it day-to-day? Peale knew talk was cheap. He gets very practical. Let's move into section 2, the practical mechanics of faith and expectation.
Right. He needed to give people concrete steps. And he boils down a lot of it into that 10-point self-confidence strategy right there in chapter 1. It's not just ideas. It's like a drill sheet.
A mental discipline plan.
Yeah, covering everything from visualization to affirmations to even seeking counseling if needed. Let's look at a couple of those points because the details are revealing. Point 1, hold a mental image of yourself succeeding. Never let it fade. Why the big emphasis on the image? Peale believed deeply in this idea that the mind always tries to complete what it pictures. He saw it as a basic psychological law. If your mental movie is constantly playing scenes of failure...
Your subconscious steers you that way.
Right. But if you really hold an unwavering picture of success, your mind starts automatically guiding your actions to make that picture real. You're essentially programming the outcome you want. Okay, that makes sense. Then there's point 8. Make a true estimate of your ability, then raise it 10%. What? Just 10%. Why not shoot for the stars? The 10% is clever psychology. If you tell yourself you can suddenly do something 100% better, it feels unbelievable, overwhelming. It might even reinforce that feeling of inadequacy, like, who am I kidding? But 10%, that feels achievable. It's a stretch, but a believable one. It gives you a concrete, manageable target for your affirmations and efforts. You can actually hit it, build some momentum, get a small win. Then maybe another 10%. It's about building confidence step by step, incremental progress, okay? And then you have the explicitly spiritual parts like point 5. Repeat, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me 10 times a day. What's the mechanism there is just the meaning of the words. It's partly the meaning, sure, the reinforcement of divine help, but Peale also emphasized the repetition, doing it 10 times daily, consistently. It's like mental conditioning.
Drilling it in.
Exactly. You're actively pushing out the usual worry and fear thoughts that might occupy that space. It's a rhythmic, faith-based drill designed to embed that confident, empowered thought deep into the subconscious so it becomes the default background noise, not the thing you have to consciously force.
Okay, so that's building inner confidence. But Peale also applied these mechanics to getting specific results, external outcomes. Which brings us to chapter 7 and the power of expectation. This is huge for him, a fundamental law he saw. Expect the worst, you tend to get it. Expect the best, you're much more likely to get that. Your expectation creates a kind of magnetic field for events. If you go into something expecting it to be hard,
Your mind and body will cooperate. You'll tense up, you'll hesitate, you'll generate the anxiety needed to make it hard.
He uses that fantastic story about Joshua Riley and the baseball team to illustrate this.
Yeah, the San Antonio club. Great players, but stuck in a terrible slump, losing game after game.
And it wasn't physical. They hadn't forgotten how to play.
No, Peale makes it clear it was entirely mental. The players expected to lose. They were thinking not victory, but defeat. And that negative thought pattern actually had a physical effect. It inhibited their natural skill, made them tight, stopped the easy flow of their talent. The expectation of failure created the failure.
So O'Reilly does something unconventional.
Very. He brings in a preacher. They have a prayer meeting right there with the team, praying over the baseball bats.
Which sounds a bit superstitious.
Right.
But Peele's point isn't that the bats became magic. The ceremony, the prayers, it was all a catalyst, a dramatic way to break the old pattern and give the team a new, shared thought pattern, the expectation of victory. And it worked. Immediately, they started winning. Peele's conclusion. The bats were the same, but the minds of the players had changed. They now believed they could win, and that belief unleashed their power. The mental block was gone. This idea of winning mentally first connects directly to that metaphor he uses for tackling problems. The one about pole vaulting. Ah, yes, the bar vaulting metaphor. Throw your heart over the bar and your body will follow. It's such an active image. What does it mean practically?
Heart here stands for your belief, your faith, your visualization, your spiritual core. Peale is saying you have to get that part of you over the obstacle first. Mentally, spiritually, you have to see yourself clearing it, believe you can clear it.
Commit fully in your mind.
Yes. If you achieve that internal victory first, if you throw your faith and affirmation over the bar, then your physical actions, your body will naturally follow along that victory groove you've already created in your mind. Mental victory precedes physical action, and he gives a very structured way to cultivate that kind of preparatory faith. The creative prayer formula: prayerize, picturize, actualize. This sounds like more than just saying prayers.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He wanted to move prayer beyond just, a routine or a desperate plea.
Yeah.
He framed it almost scientifically, a focused spiritual practice aiming for efficiency and results.
Okay, break down those steps. What's prayerize?
Yeah.
Prayerize means making creative prayer a daily system. It's not about talking to some distant, vague entity. It's about communicating with God as a close, accessible partner. Asking specific practical questions. Okay, Lord, what should I do about this situation? Or give me a fresh angle on this business problem. It means living with an ongoing expectation of guidance. So integrating prayer into the flow of daily life and work constantly. Then comes picturize. This links directly back to the visualization idea. Peale connects it to what psychologists call the realizable wish. He believed that the person who genuinely assumes success, who sees it clearly in their mind's eye, already starts to embody the qualities needed for that success.
It's visualization with a spiritual dimension.
Exactly. And the power of this is shown in that story about the couple on the verge of divorce.
Right, the wife whose husband wanted out.
Yeah. She calmly suggests they wait 90 days. And during that time, she engages in intense mental discipline. Every night, she deliberately pictured him back in their normal life, sitting in his usual chair, helping with the dishes, playing golf together. She was essentially overwriting the current negative reality with this faith-fueled mental image of what she desired.
Holding that picture despite the circumstances.
Steadfastly. And Peale reports that when the 90 days were up, she gently reminded him. His reaction: confusion. "Don't be silly," he supposedly said. "I couldn't possibly get along without you." The internal picturing, sustained by faith, had manifested externally. Her heart went over the bar and reality followed.
Wow, that's quite a story.
It is, and he argued this wasn't just for personal problems. It worked in business, too. He tells of 4 executives who used what they called prayer-stimulated idea sessions.
How did that work?
They'd start meetings with 10 minutes of silent prayer, not just quiet time, but actively affirming that God was about to release good ideas through their minds. Only after that spiritual preparation would they start brainstorming, just letting ideas flow without any initial criticism.
Connecting faith directly to business innovation.
Absolutely. And Peale claims this method produced a remarkably high percentage of their best, most practical business strategies. They weren't just using their intellect, they felt they were consciously tapping into a deeper divine source of creativity. It's a real blend of the spiritual and the pragmatic, very typical of that era.
Okay, so we've seen how these mental mechanics are meant to build confidence and achieve goals. Now, let's shift focus slightly in section 3, looking at energy, pace, and what Peale calls mental catharsis. He presents an interesting paradox about energy, doesn't he?
He really does. In chapter 3, he challenges the common idea that we get exhausted just from working hard physically.
That's usually what we assume, right?
Yeah.
Long hours is a burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Peale argues that's often not the main culprit. He states very clearly, it's not the work itself that drains us. The real energy vampires are emotional upheaval. Things like fear, resentment, constant worry, internal conflicts. Those are what consume massive amounts of our vitality. So if your mind and body are aligned, energy should replenish naturally.
That's the idea. If you're not leaking energy through negative emotions, your natural reserve should keep you going, which means the key to having lots of energy is actually emotional self-control.
He's the example of the efficient executive.
Right. This guy had an insane workload, but his doctor wasn't worried about him cracking up. Why? Because he was, quote, a thoroughly well-organized individual with no energy leaks. His religious faith wasn't just comfort. Peale saw it as a practical mechanism for preventing energy leaks. He operated with what Peale termed easy power.
Flowing, not forcing.
Exactly. And contrast that with Thomas Edison. Mrs. Edison called him nature's man. His incredible energy, Peale suggests, came not just from being organized, but from profound emotional stability. He was free from obsessions, inner turmoil, neuroses.
His ability to just sleep soundly, instantly.
Yeah, like a child. Sleep deeply, wake up refreshed. Peale saw that as evidence of being in harmony with nature, with God, conserving immense energy through emotional balance. Easy power again.
But for most of us, that kind of calm seems impossible, especially today. But even back then, Peale saw the problem, the pace of modern life.
He definitely saw it accelerating in the 50s, leading to more tension, frustration, what he called toxicity. Remember that quote from the old woman? Life is so daily.
It just keeps coming at you.
Right.
And Peale noticed this really unhealthy pattern developing. People getting so used to being tense that they actually felt uncomfortable if they weren't stressed, mistaking that frantic energy for being productive, which is the opposite of easy power.
Completely. So the goal becomes developing a more natural, God-ordered pace, and that means actively practicing peacefulness. It often requires a deliberate mental reset.
And sometimes a reset needs to be dramatic, like the cemetery prescription.
Ugh, yes, that's unforgettable. This overworked guy, totally convinced the world rested on his shoulders. Everything depends upon me.
Classic burnout candidate.
Totally.
So the doctor gives him this bizarre prescription: take a long walk, take a half day off work, and go sit on a tombstone in a cemetery.
Seriously.
Seriously. And while sitting there, repeat a specific verse from Psalm 90. 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past. Wow. Talk about perspective.
Exactly. The genius of it is the context. Surrounded by the quiet permanence of death, reciting words about the fleeting nature of human time. Peale says the man instantly got a proper sense of his own importance. His problems didn't vanish, but they shrank dramatically in scale.
He realized he wasn't the center of the universe.
Right. He started delegating, stopped fretting so much. The anxiety just didn't seem justified anymore against that backdrop. He slowed down.
Okay, that's a powerful, if slightly morbid, technique. What about something for daily use?
For that, we have the story of the high-strung man who learned from a bird.
A bird.
Yeah. Couldn't sleep well, always tense. One morning, he watches a bird wake up. What does it do? It stretches deliberately. It sings a little song, like praise, then it starts its day, slow and easy like.
Taking a moment before diving in.
Exactly. So the man decides to copy the bird. He starts his day by stretching, and then he sings hymns, even though he admits he couldn't carry a tune.
Huh. Did it help?
He found the singing was a powerful releasing mechanism. It broke the tension before the day's stress could even grab hold. It was this conscious, gentle transition from rest into activity, overriding his usual habit of frantic rushing.
So managing your inner state requires this kind of deliberate action, which leads to achieving a peaceful mind. Peale talks about a renewing of your minds, right?
Yes.
Changing the thought patterns.
Yes, and he presents it as a very disciplined two-step process. First comes what he calls mental catharsis.
Like a flushing out.
Let's call it mind emptying. He really stresses doing this frequently middle of the morning, mid-afternoon, definitely before bed. You have to actively visualize your mind, emptying out all the anxiety, the fear, the resentment. Picture it flowing out like water from a basin when you pull the plug. It's a mental and spiritual reset you have to practice.
But you can't just leave it empty, right?
Exactly. He warns that the mind will not long remain empty. Nature abhors a vacuum, as they say, and all the negativity will just rush back in if you let it. So step 2, immediately after emptying, is mind filling.
Actively putting something positive in its place.
Consciously. You fill that mental space with thoughts of faith, hope, courage, and peaceful experiences. He suggests revisiting calming memories, like remembering a trip to Waikiki, or even looking at a picture that evokes peace.
Like that story about the dining room mural.
Yeah, that's a brilliant example of using your environment psychologically. This person had the peaceful countryside scene from his childhood painted on his dining room wall. When he felt stressed or tired, he'd go sit there, look at the mural, and deliberately revisit specific spots in the painting, mentally remembering fishing in the stream, feeling the warm dust.
Using memory as a tool to induce calm.
Precisely. Consciously accessing those stored experiences of peace to counteract the current stress. It's about deliberately imposing a calm, positive pattern onto your mind. Oh, okay, this is all quite intensive mental work. How does it actually play out in terms of, well, living a better life? Let's move to section 4. Application to life, happiness, healing, and relationships. How does this lead to happiness? Peale is very direct about happiness. He insists it's fundamentally a choice and then a practice. It's not just something that happens to you based on circumstances.
He uses that example of the old man on TV.
Right.
That's his secret to happiness. The old guy just says something like, look, I have two choices, be happy or be unhappy. What do you think I choose? I just choose to be happy. Simple as that, in Peale's view. Happiness becomes a habit you develop by deliberately practicing happy thinking, which contrasts sharply with the opposite, the unhappiness manufacturer. Yeah, the story of the lawyer on the train whose wife, he joked, was in the manufacturing business, unhappiness. She was constantly finding things to complain about, thinking negatively, basically distilling misery from everyday life, using her mental energy to create negativity for herself and everyone around her. Exactly. So the antidote, Peale says, is to cultivate the happiness habit. He gives a specific morning practice, say Psalm 118.24 out loud 3 times before breakfast, with enthusiasm. This is the day which the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Setting the tone first thing.
Ritualistically programming yourself for happiness as the default for the day. But it's not just internal thoughts. It has to translate into action.
Which brings us to Redcap Ralston Young at Grand Central Station.
Such a wonderful story.
Real.
Redcap number 42. He saw his real job not just as carrying bags, but as living the spirit of Christ, actively looking for ways to give people a little lift, some hope, some courage. He was practicing love to generate happiness.
And he was strategic about it, like with the crying woman in the wheelchair.
Yeah, he didn't dwell on her obvious suffering. He prayed for an idea, Peale says, and then immediately complimented her hat and dress. He shifted her focus.
From her pain to something positive about herself.
Exactly. His kindness, his prayerfulness, his skill at redirecting attention. It was an active process of manufacturing happiness, both for others and, implicitly for himself, through the act of giving.
Okay, so happiness is a choice and a practice. What about physical health? Peale wrote about using faith in healing too, right?
He did. And this was during a time when the idea of psychosomatic illness, the mind affecting the body, was gaining more traction. He really encouraged doctors and ministers to work together.
He wasn't suggesting faith instead of medicine. No, absolutely not. He saw them as partners. Looked at the veteran story, the man whose physical condition improved, alongside his daily Bible reading and growing hope. Peale's conclusion was always, it's the doctor's skill plus the patient's faith that brings healing. Faith wasn't a replacement. It was a vital addition that helped remove the internal stress, the energy leaks that could hinder recovery. And he summarized what he observed in successful healing cases into those 5 factors. Right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing. Things like, right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing. Things like, 1, complete willingness to surrender your will to God. Right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing. Things like, 2, completely letting go of sin and guilt, that inner cleansing. Right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing. Things like 3, believing in both medicine and God's power working together. Right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing.
Things like 4, being willing to accept God's answer even if it's not the cure you wanted, without bitterness. Right, and they show that the faith required is active and demanding, not passive wishing. Things like 5, and having substantial, unwavering faith that God can heal. That second point, letting go of guilt, connects right back to the idea of emotional energy leaks, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Plugging those leaks of guilt and resentment frees up the body's resources to focus on physical healing. Mental catharsis and spiritual cleansing are linked to physical vitality.
Okay, finally, how does all this apply to overcoming problems generally and dealing with other people? For problem solving, he starts with a very rational step. Get the facts objectively. lists the difficulties on paper. This takes the subjective fear out of it, makes it manageable. And then he lays out those 10 practical steps to problem solving in Chapter 10.
Yeah, it's a fascinating blend. You have rational steps like keep calm, assemble facts impartially, list them on paper, but then you also have pray for illumination, trust your intuition, even go to church and let your subconscious work on it.
Belief comes first, though.
Crucially, step one is believe a solution exists. You have to expect an answer before you even start looking. And the key to overcoming defeat itself, it echoes the baseball story and that golf lesson he mentions.
The rough is only mental.
Exactly. The pro golfer telling him the difficulty of a bad lie in golf is mostly in your head, your decision that is a tough spot. If you approach it convinced you don't believe in defeat, affirming your power to get out, the obstacle seems smaller. Your attitude changes the fact of the bad lie.
And this self-mastery extends to relationships. Getting people to like you. His advice is essentially, become a comfortable person.
Right.
Get rid of the scratchy parts of your personality being too rigid, critical, bossy, things that push people away. He uses Jim Farley, the politician, as an example. Yeah, former postmaster general, apparently famous for his people skills. How did he do it? Simple things. Remembering names, being genuinely interested, treating everyone with respect, like reaching out to shake the hand of a black maid, which might have been unusual then, being unegotistical, comfortable, outgoing, respecting others. And what if you really struggle to like someone? If someone just rubs you the wrong way?
He offers that clever ego-building technique. This man was really irritated by certain colleagues. Peale's advice: make an exhaustive list of admirable qualities for every single person who annoyed him. Pray about it, focus on their good points.
Actively looking for the good instead of the bad.
Right. And by deliberately changing his own internal attitude, his focus, the external relationship started to change too. It all comes back to managing your own thoughts and feelings first.
Okay, so wrapping this all up in our outro, the cycle Peale presents seems clear. You start by tackling the negatives. Yeah,
Okay.
identify and root out the negative thinking, the attitudes like inferiority, worry, resentment. See them for what they are. Energy leaks draining your power. And then you actively replace them with the positive spiritual techniques.
Exactly. Prayerize, picturize, affirmation, cultivating faith. Peale truly believed this constant, disciplined inflow of new thoughts can remake you. He saw the secret as deliberately throwing out the old, negative, dead thoughts and replacing them with vital, dynamic, faith-filled ones.
And it really does keep circling back to energy, to power. That statistic about sleeping pills is shocking millions of doses daily, even back then.
It highlights his point powerfully. We waste so much energy through emotional tension, through those leaks. Real power, the easy power he talks about, comes from learning to relax, to manage the mind, like Edison or that efficient executive.
Because the mind is fundamentally creative.
Yeah.
It tries to complete the picture you give it. Picture success with faith, you draw it closer. Picture defeat.
You build the obstacle yourself. You give it power it doesn't inherently have. Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, drawn straight from Peale. He insists repeatedly that the rough, the difficulty, the obstacle in your life is only mental. So the question to ponder is, what specific, persistent mental shift would it take for you to genuinely believe that? To truly internalize it and then act on the conviction that whatever you're facing right now, I don't believe in defeat. Because according to Peale, the depth of that belief is what determines the size of victory you can even imagine, let alone achieve. It's a powerful challenge. Thanks for digging deep with us into the roots of positive thinking.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Till next time, keep digging.